Mr. Mayor, we're now live.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Welcome, everybody. Due to the COVID-19 emergency declaration, this meeting of Ajax Council is being held electronically and live streamed on the town's website. All members of council in attendance are participating by audio and video teleconference, and senior town staff are available throughout the meeting if council members have any questions on the agenda. For members of the public watching from home, please bear with us if we encounter any technical difficulties throughout the meeting. I'll now call this meeting to order. I'd like to begin this meeting by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is situated within the traditional and treaty territories of the Mississaugas, more specifically, the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation, signatories of the Gunshot Treaty of 1788 and the Williams Treaty of 1923. This land is and will continue to be home to the Indigenous peoples. Let us acknowledge the mistakes and traumas of the past through authenticity and support truth and reconciliation. Let us engage and celebrate Indigenous communities by being leaders of action in acknowledging the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and the Truth and Reconciliation Commission recommendations towards truth and reconciliation. Let us keep these principles close as we continue towards truth and reconciliation and as we move forward with kindness and respect as a community. Does any member of Ajax Council have a disclosure of pecuniary interest? Nope. Okay. Hearing and seeing none. Moving on to the closed session, we have authority to hold a closed session moved by Councillor Tyler Moore and seconded by Councillor Khan. The council convened to a closed session pursuant to section 239, paragraph 2, paragraph D of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended to discuss a matter pertaining to labor relations or employee negotiations. Questions or comments? Hearing none, those in favor? Going in session, thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, we are live.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. I have the ratify actions taken in camera, moved by Councillor Crawford, second by Councillor Bauer, that all directions approved during the closed session be ratified. Those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Adoption of the minutes. We have, just one second here. Adoption of minutes moved by Councillor Tyler Moore and second by Councillor Khan that the following minutes of previous council meetings be adopted: of the regular meeting December 14th, 2020, and of the special meeting of January 6th, 2021. Questions or comments, errors or omissions on the minutes? Hearing, seeing none. Those in favor of approval of the minutes? I see all hands. That's approved. Thank you. Mr. Clerk, I forgot to ask, were there any questions submitted by the public on tonight's agenda?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have not received any questions submitted for tonight's agenda.
Okay. Moving on to items of correspondence, moved by Councillor Tyler Moore. And oh, wait a minute. Where are we? Sorry. Delegations. Need to scroll that up quicker. Item 6.1, Proclamation, Durham Region Hospice Awareness Day, January 29th, 2021. We have Donna McFarland, Durham Region Hospice. Ms. McFarland, are you with us?
I believe I am.
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Okay, great. Great. First of all, just thank you very much, Mayor Collier, members of council, members of the general public and staff for allowing me to come tonight. And thank you also for being part of the declaration of this Friday, January 29th, as Durham Region Hospice Awareness Day. This was something that was started last year by Regional Chair John Henry, and now the municipalities have come on board as well. And we are really grateful for that. So I thought it was a good opportunity just to update council on where we are in terms of residential hospice, hospice residences in Durham region. Next slide, please. As you know, we've talked about this before, Durham region is still one of the only regions of its size without a hospice residence in Ontario. But the good news is we're getting closer to making that no longer an issue. Oak Ridge's hospice, which is 8 beds in Port Perry, is built and is now furnishing and staffing up and expects to open its doors in April or May of this year. They were about a year ahead of Clarington and Whitby when they got on board. And so it's exciting that those 8 beds will soon become available to the residents of Durham region. Clarington Hospice is a 9-bed one, and it's in the fundraising phase still, just like the Whitby Hospice of 10 beds. And so by the time the 3 of them are built, we'll have 27 hospice beds in the region for all residents. That's a start. We need all of them. 2 years ago, we needed 33. So we'll be doing catch up for a little while. Next slide, please. This is just a reminder about what happens in a hospice. Basically, it's for those people who are at end of life and either can't stay in the hospital or can't stay at home, or just want another option where they can die with peace and dignity and compassion. And if any of you or know of anyone who's ever experienced a hospice setting, it's always quite amazing to me that people describe it as a wonderful experience when indeed they're dealing with the death of a loved one, but truly is something that we need in this region, and that will be an absolute addition to the healthcare system. Next slide, please. So I just thought I'd give you a quick update on what's happening in Whitby. Clarington is very similar. The land transfer is ready to go with the town, the site plan's approved, and we're just now preparing the documents to go to the Ministry of Health for approval to go to tender. A contract is a service agreement's being negotiated with VON Canada. They will provide the services in the hospice, the clinical care, and again, that's in partnership with Clarington. This past fall, we completed the pre-qualification process for construction, and we hope to go to tender this spring, targeting construction in the summer and then opening 12 to 14 months after that date. Next slide. This is basically the budget and the fundraising status of where we are, because it's always good to know what we're trying to do. As you can see, we need about $6.7 million to actually build the hospice, $800,000 for the furniture and fixtures, and then we need operating reserve because, of course, this is a new enterprise and we need to make sure we have enough funds for the first couple of years to operate. So to date, including the provincial money, we're at 6.3 million. And even through COVID, we've been successful in attracting some large donations. So we're very grateful to the community. So we're about 453,000 away from construction. Next slide, please. So we need that 453,000 to have enough money to go to construction in order to get permission from the ministry to go to tender. And that's basically what we're focused on right now. And as I said, construction will take 12 to 14 months. Clarington is about the same as us. They're just going into their pre-qualification process now. So I'm very confident to say that by the summer or fall of 2022, we should have 2 more hospices in this region. And we thank everyone for their support, including the town of Ajax. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Any questions so far? Councillor Tyler Moore.
Thank you, Your Worship. And thank you so much to the Durham Region Hospice just for bringing this forward and all the hard work you've done. I just want to say congratulations. It's such an important part. It's one of those things in our community we don't think about. We're just all living our lives and we're busy. But boy, if you've got this scenario in your family, so happy to see this coming to fruition. Thank you for all your hard work and everybody that's done the work with you.
Thank you.
Further, any other member of council questions? Hearing none. This is the first time we've done this, Donna. So we're doing the virtual proclamation presentation today. So it's my honor on behalf of myself and Ajax Council, the Corporation Town of Ajax hereby proclaims January 29th, 2021 as Durham Region Hospice Awareness Day, presented on behalf of myself and Ajax Council.
Thank you ever so much. That's fabulous.
Sure the real paper copy will probably be provided by mail. Mr. Clerk?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that's correct.
Perfect.
That's fabulous. Thank you ever so much.
You are welcome. Thank you. Moving on to our next item. Let me find my agenda here.
It's me.
We have our next delegation. 6.2, Gift of Health and Wellness from the Town of Ajax to Ajax Pickering Hospital. Tracy Patterson, CEO, Ajax Pickering Hospital Foundation.
Hello, good evening. Your Worship and councillors, it's great to see all of you. I think I saw most of you probably at events when we were allowed outside. And we're back to inside again, but I just wanted to say something about the Town of Ajax. I must say a lot of the councillors and staff, as soon as this pandemic started, reached out to us offering your support to the hospital. It's very much appreciated. And all the things you've done and had the residents do, from the signs going up to painted rocks to pictures in people's windows and drive-throughs. I have to say, even last week, I had 2 nurses especially stop by to say how much they appreciated the lights being up on Harwood. Shift changes at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. So the staff seeing them coming in and going home. So thank you very much for all of that. It is very much noticed by the staff. Thank you. Change the slide. Just wanted to bring you up to date on a project that Town of Ajax was helping us with. It seems like a lifetime ago when we were talking about improving a space at the hospital for the health, wellness, and comfort of staff and visitors and patients. The cafeteria is more than just that. It's not just an eating space. It's a gathering space where patients' families go to wait to hear news from how the surgery's gone. We have families bring family members down to share time with them, especially people who have been in the hospital a long time. It's good to get off the floors. And the other thing is just having our staff, being able to get away from their frontline units and have some time to themselves. So the drawing you're seeing was the proposal we brought to the town. And if you flip the page, so this is what it looks like as of last week. Pandemic, unsurprisingly, slowed things down. So we had all of this furniture delivered in boxes behind hoarding. So it's been hiding from everybody for months until we had the ability to finish the project. As you might imagine, our own staff have been redeployed and redirected to things during the pandemic. So this kind of was on hold, but you can see how beautiful it is. So the furniture is, hospital grade, heavy duty furniture, but it's easy enough to move to accommodate wheelchairs and some of the big patient chairs that get moved. Next slide, please. So you can see this seating area is quite lovely. We have televisions, and also I'm sure it doesn't show up the best in the pictures, but there's actually an artificial fireplace there, and it's gorgeous. It's just so peaceful. It obviously doesn't let out any heat, but just having that ambiance makes it so peaceful and nice to be in, especially in the dark days. Next slide. So this is the look if you were to come in the east entrance and immediately look down. You're looking into this cafeteria space. So there's nice new cafe tables. And to the left, where the big tall windows are, there's 3 nice outdoor tables coming as well. Next slide. So from this view, you can see to the left where there's cafe style chairs and kind of orange underneath. That's new cafe seating, and each seat also has a data drop and electricity. So people can sit in and charge their electronics. You'll see there's a vending machine there that's actually is probably already gone. It's on its way out. And then we're moving down that television set, but actually that's data about patients that are in the operating room. So as patients come in, the family is given a unique ID number, and they can actually look on that screen to see where their family member is. So it says the ID, it's got the doctor's name, and then it says whether they're in pre-op, in surgery, in recovery, or in day surgery. So that way they can sit in the cafeteria and wait and know when to go upstairs. Next slide, please. So here we snuck in a little thing on the sofa. It's the first time we've ever done it, but we actually managed to get a stamp in. It looks very pretty in person, but it says Ajax 65. So we're glad to be able to do that. Next slide. And thank you very much. So so that's the good news. The not as fun news is after we took the pictures, we promptly had to rearrange all the furniture to satisfy occupational health and safety because we're only allowed 1 person sitting at a table at a time during the pandemic. I'm sure most of you know that they're very restrictive on visitors at the moment, that any shared eating space is heavily monitored to make sure people are socially distanced. So everything's being spread out. For the short term, I'm sure it'll all be as we showed in the pictures going forward. I don't know if you follow our social media, but you'll see Bernie Sanders was sitting outside waiting to have that space unveiled. So he'll be pleased to know what was behind there. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoy what you've seen. There's a few more little treats coming in. So when the project is finished, we'll come back, maybe not in person, but certainly give you a report and some more photos. So I just wanted to in person thank all of you for your vision. You're tremendously supportive of the hospital financially, but also spiritually with all the care you give us. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you.
Well, I will just wrap up. Happy to support Tracy. You guys do great work over there. We all benefit from the work you do. And I didn't respond to your email yet earlier about the Mayor's Classic, but yes, I am in. So
Thank
I'll
you.
save myself writing that email. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you very much.
Moving on to our agenda. We have items of correspondence moved by Councillor Tyler Moore and second by Councillor Crawford. The report dated January 25th, 2021 containing items of correspondence to be received for information. Do we have any polls? Councillor Lee?
Number 2, please.
Number 2. Councillor Bauer?
I have a lot of polls, please, Mayor. Items 3, 6, 7, 8, 10, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 19, 20, and 21.
Okay.
And go.
On the balance, which would be 1, 4, 5, 9, 11, 12. Those in favor of receiving those? Okay, those are carried. Councillor Lee, item number 2, please.
Thank you. This was done by our library board chair, Noel Green, in regards to Ajax Library going fine-free. I just want to point out just some kind of key statistics that Mr. Green had pulled out. Realistically, being fine-free has led to huge growth in various libraries. The Chicago Library saw a 240% increase in returned items. Salt Lake County Public Library saw 11% increase in the number of monthly borrowers, 16% increase in children's materials at High Plains District Library. I think ultimately we have to decide, what is the library for? Just like we've always said, automated speed enforcement is not a revenue generation. We shouldn't be looking at the library as revenue gen, because that is not what the library is for. The library is for community. It's for people to connect. It's for people to get a leg up, people to take care of your kids, for reading resources, and assortment of other programs. And that I think going fine-free is actually a really modern thing. I think every library in the next decade will be going fine-free. And ultimately, I think it's the way to go, because we shouldn't be punishing people unless they lose something, in which case, if they lose it, absolutely, after 2 weeks, you'll have to pay for it. But just tacking on fees, that's the way of Blockbuster. And we should be going the way of Netflix of, yeah, you don't pay unless you actually have taken something. So I'm looking to move this for endorsement for council.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Councillor Dice?
Thank you. So you're looking for endorsement this evening?
I am.
So it's a recommendation then to go free.
Just endorse the
fee-free,
letter.
so to say. Just endorse the letter. So, and what does the CAO of the library have to say about this? Or are they is the board in agreement with this?
Yes, excuse me. The board voted on this, I think it was November, if I'm not mistaken. The Clio was at our GDC meeting, just expunging to the benefits of this, the virtues of this. And so she's in full support of it as well.
Okay, thank you.
Further? I have a couple of questions. Councillor Lee, can you tell us, or perhaps, I don't think we have anybody on here from the library. Is Miss Valentin here? Are you able to, somebody speak to how much the fines that were collected or that would be collected in a normal year would, like how much money are we talking about here, please? Councillor Lee, do you know, or I think our treasurer is on here.
Hello, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I am here. It's Diane Valentin. The only thing I can speak to is the $50,000 that was identified in the library budget that they are decreasing. I apologize. I don't know the library's detailed expenditures at this point.
Okay.
But I think
so-
the number we're working with is 50,000, Chair.
Yes.
Okay, so we're looking at 50,000. How are they going to be making up this difference? Because the library budget, I don't recall the exact number, but I believe the library budget has gone up.
That's correct. In the upcoming budget that you will see February 8th, the library is looking for an increase in the grant from the town.
Okay. Since this is, thank you for that. Since this does affect the budget, I would move that this be referred to the budget process. Please, I'm looking for a seconder. I don't think we can endorse something when it's going to have budget impacts that we don't know about at this time. A second by
Does-
Councilor Tyler Moore.
Does mine have to be defeated first, or does yours trump?
Mine trumps yours, a referral.
Just make sure. Okay.
I don't believe we have discussion on that because there isn't a, it's just being referred to the budget process. So those in favor of referring this to the budget process? 1, 2, 3,
No.
4, 5, 6, 7. That's carried.
Just 6.
That item is referred. Thank you for bringing that forward, Councilor Lee. Councilor
course.
Bauer.
If it's referred, I can't ask a question, right?
No.
Okay.
That it will. You can ask those questions during the budget process, where it will come up again. Councilor Bauer.
Yes, thank you. All the items that I pulled are being requested to be endorsed. These are items that have, mostly from the region, things that we've already approved, I guess, or are in favor of here in the town. So,
And thank you. I'll need a seconder, please, to endorse these items. Second by Councilor Khan. And yeah, I'm glad you brought these forward. I reviewed them all, and these are all things that, even though some are already passed, like requesting that Section 6 be removed from Bill 229, these are things to do, but they are still positions that the town of Ajax has supported, and I've written letters to the ministers on, as well as there's one in there which speaks to the preferred solution for the York sewage system and the potential of twinning the pipes to bring their waste down here. Also to anaerobic digestion and a few others which would have effect on Ajax. So absolutely support that. Anything further on these items for endorsements? Hearing none, those in favor? I see most hands. That's enough. That's carried. Thank you. Those are endorsed. Okay, moving on to reports. We have moved by Councillor Khan, second by Councillor Lee, the Community Affairs and Planning Committee report dated January 4th, 2021 be adopted. Any questions or comments on the Community Affairs and Planning reports? Hearing, seeing none. Those in favor? Any opposed? No, that's carried. Moving on to the General Government Committee reports, we have the General Government Committee report January 11th, moved by Councillor Lee, seconded by Councillor Bauer, that the General Government Committee report dated January 11th be adopted. Questions or comments on the GGC reports? Okay, hearing none. Those in favor? None opposed. That's carried. Moving on to the GGC report of January 18th, moved by Councillor Lee, second by Councillor Khan, that the GGC report dated January 18th be adopted. Questions or comments? Hearing none. Those in favor? None opposed. That's carried. And the summary of the advisory committee reports, moved by Councillor Tyler Moore and second by Councillor Dyes, that the summary of advisory committee reports dated January 25th, 2021, as attached to the meeting agenda, be received for information, and that the recommendations contained therein be referred to staff where applicable. Questions or comments? Councillor Dyes.
Thank you very much. I have a question for Mr. Sawchuk if he's here this evening.
Mr. Clerk, is Mr. Sawchuk here this evening?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Sawchuk is not with us this evening. However, the Director of Planning and Development Services is available.
Okay,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Romanowski, are you, go ahead, Councillor Dyes.
So my question was, and I know this came up previously in a report with respect to the Durham Scarborough Bus Rapid Transit Program by Metrolinx and the affected properties within the village. And it gave the addresses of the properties, but I don't know the properties by address. I know them by a photograph or if there's some detailed information on them as to where they are located. So I wondered if you could sort of give me an update on which properties you're speaking of, where they're located, and what the issues are.
Through the chair to Regional Councillor Dyes. I don't have the map or addresses right in front of me. Definitely something that we could follow up with you with regard to those addresses. I know there's some mapping that's been done between the region, Metrolinx, and the town when it comes to the scope of work. I know Mr. Greaves on the line dealing with transportation matters. He might be able to speak to just the scope of the project. However, specifically with regards to the impacted addresses, I don't have that information right in front of me, but definitely can follow up with you on that following the meeting.
Well, I think it's important that it's also, I guess I'd like to know if it's been discussed whether there's communication going out to the public as to what is being impacted because they are heritage buildings. And I know that there have been some concerns expressed, and I know they haven't quite figured out all of the details yet, but I think those properties, I think we should know or have information about those properties.
We do know, we do have information about those properties.
Mm-hmm.
From what I understand, the consultation process is still going through as discussed. Metrolinx did come before this council and a committee of council to kind of lay out what the process is and where they are with discussions about this segment of this corridor. So go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt you. I guess it's getting information on the affected properties, the heritage properties, how they are affected before any decisions are made. And I think that'd be helpful before we go further down this road.
Definitely, and through the chair to Regional Councillor Dyes. Mr. Sawchuk's been included as part of this process all along, so he is meeting or has been meeting with the groups or part of the conversations following the meetings. And we, from what I remember in discussing this with Mike, is that we do have an inventory of those properties. And as it relates to heritage aspects, that's something that we can ensure is taken into consideration as we move through.
Thank you, Mr. Romanowski. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Thank you. Councillor Crawford.
Thank you, Mayor. Just in response to this, at works, I was going to mention it in the regional report, was there was a report on there about land expropriation by the BRT and by Metrolinx. And oddly enough, Ajax was not mentioned at all. So I had asked the question, and then I had somebody from Durham region actually reach out to me to have a discussion around the village and that. And so Rob and I sat and we had a meeting with them. I think part of the information is, I'm not sure how public this is at this point. And so there's surprisingly not as much property as I would have thought to go through there. But I think at this point, it's so far down the road through the village that it wasn't even discussed in our works committee. I don't know if that helps, but I'm happy to have a conversation with you offline, Councillor Dyes, if you want, and I can just let you know that those results anyway.
Okay, thank you. Anything further on the advisory committee reports? Seeing and hearing none, those in favor of receipt? I see all hands, that's carried, thank you. Do we have regional council reports today? Councillor Lee.
At the committee of the whole, Toronto Global came back to the region. And, this was started with Mayor Collier. It's been continued with myself. I think we've signed on a few other devotees that it's a lead generation for international development. And we've paid millions of dollars to this company for lead gens and for employment. And we've created 2 jobs from it. So, we keep asking every year, maybe we shouldn't be giving 200,000. And I get it. 200,000 against the regional budget is not a lot of money, but it's gotten us 2 jobs. We could pay $1 million per job and it would have been the same results. So yeah, that sucked. I think most regional councillors are still in support of Toronto Global because of this fallacy that it gives us a seat at the table or whatever that means. But it's something that we'll hopefully keep fighting. A piece of news that did come up at that meeting was that there is a penalty for leaving the Toronto Global contract, which I believe I asked at Planning and ECD and was told there wasn't. So I imagine at some time on Wednesday at the regional council meeting, that'll be brought up by Councillor Neal. But yes, that was the big update of just every year I will continue to update this council on when we will eventually get rid of Toronto Global, because this is my windmill that I'm attacking. So thank you.
Thank you. Anything further on regional council reports? Councillor Dice.
Just a quick one. We didn't have a Health and Social Services Committee meeting last month, or this month, I should say. However, we did have an update from our Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Kyle. And basically, I think people be kind of know and are relieved to know that the vaccines have started to roll out with the healthcare workers and those at risk, particularly in long-term care residences. And so they're hoping by the end of this month, all of those workers and probably some of the residents of these retirement homes, long-term care, will have had their vaccination by the end of the month. Of course, that's all changing now slightly because there's been a slight delay as Pfizer has, their supply chain has slowed down a little bit. They're doing some retrofits to their plant, was my understanding. So it's going to change, and there will be an update on Wednesday at Regional Council. So we wanted to know they're still going forward, from my understanding, with phase 2 and 3 rollout, which is figuring out where we're going to get those vaccines to. Right now in Ajax, the hospital was the place where they were going to do that. They're exploring more and more opportunities out there to have vaccines on a large scale. And it's just a matter of planning phase 2 and 3 to get the vaccines there where there's freezers to accommodate it and enough people to do the inoculations. So plans are underway, and I think that's coming on Wednesday for Durham region. So we'll know more then. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other regional council reports? Any questions on the regional council reports? I just have one, since I don't see any hands, and that's just Councillor Lee, and not even so much as a question, just I appreciate you bringing that forward about the Toronto Global. This is now in its 14th year. It was 10 years as the GTMA, Greater Toronto Marketing Authority or Association, one of those. And now the 4th, I believe the 5th year now so it's the 15th year, sorry, I misspoke, of Toronto Global. And every year we keep getting told the same thing. This is the year. Well, we finally got 2 temporary jobs out of it. And for a $2 million investment, this will be now the 10th consecutive budget where I will be trying to have that $214,000 removed. As I said in the meeting, I mean, I think we would have better results buying lottery tickets with that $214,000 than we have an investment. And that $214,000 or that $2 million cumulative, it's fine for the first few years, but at some point you have to see the results are zero year after year and make that decision. That money could have gone a long way invested in the Spark Center or in any of our local incubator tech hubs that are popping up to move business forward locally. And I think that would be a better bet. And we have actually proven, I think it was just before the last election, but the investment in foreign, our trips to China and to Brazil and to Germany, we're producing fruit and we're producing jobs. and the money was working very well there. And those stopped. So I don't think we're looking at reducing the budget. We're just looking at reallocating the funds to where we had better results. So I totally support you on that. Councillor Crawford, I saw your hand.
Yeah, I think I recall them also taking credit for all the Amazons suddenly popping up.
Yes, yes. Yes, I smiled at that one too. Anything further just on, oh, 1 second. Did I miss this? Mr. Clerk, I don't have a resolution to receive the regional council reports. Was there one in the package?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe there was, but if there's not, simply a resolution to receive the regional council's reports
So
will be.
can I get a mover to receive the regional council reports for information? Councillor Lee, seconded by Councillor Crawford, that we receive the regional council reports for information. Those in favor? Any opposed? None. That's carried. Thank you. Mr. Clerk, I'm sure you noted that. Business arising from notice of motion. We have a motion to suspend the rules of procedure moved by Councillor Lee, second by Councillor Khan, that the rules of procedure be suspended to introduce a motion without notice regarding funding for sick leave. Do we have any questions or concerns on the motion to suspend the rules? We'll require 2/3, so 5. Those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's enough. That is carried. Councillors Lee and Khan, you are free to bring forward your motion at the end. But first, we have Ravenscroft Road by Councillor Tyler Moore. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, we see the motion there. I would say all members of council are quite aware of this motion and what it means. Specifically, I'll skip all the whereases, but it's a stop sign intersection at Ravenscroft Road and Radford Drive, Ravenscroft Road and Brennan Road. This street, this challenge has been going on for the better part of 3 council terms. Regional Councillor Crawford has dealt with it for probably better part of a decade. And Mayor Collier now and before her, and for my entire time here at council. And I know that there's a lot of passion for this from the residents on the street and the people that drive on that street and people that live around that street. During the campaign in 2018, I talked to a lot of residents about doing something about traffic calming on that street, and I did speak about stop signs. I also would like to acknowledge and thank John Grieve for his guidance and help on this up until now, and specifically in regards to this motion, which he may or may not want to speak to. So I want to thank my council colleagues for considering this. I know you've heard the name Ravenscroft a lot in the last 2 years, and I would really appreciate your support on this motion. And I'd like to move on to some more streets. I know John has, I think, a total of 12 coming up that we're going to be doing community safety zones on, which opens up more opportunity for us. So I'll leave it at that for now. But as I said, I would really appreciate your support. And again, thank you for even considering this, because it's a bit of a different animal, but there's been a lot of staff resources and a lot of passions on this. So I'll leave it at that for now, Your Worship. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on the motion? Councillor Dice. Actually, you know what? Sorry, Joanne, I'm going to let Marilyn go first as a seconder.
Sure.
Crawford, then I'll come back to Councillor Dice.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I just want to say that I'm not really a strong believer in stop signs. I think that if you go along just about any street in Ajax, there's probably a stop sign that you go, what in the world is that there for? And it's because somebody politically decided that this is the right thing to do with a stop sign. There's tons of them all over the town. But in this particular case, we have done quite an extensive amount of work on getting information. So for instance, we talked to our police officer prior to our new police officer, Malcolm Wilson. He also was supportive that of course not everybody is going to be stopping, but it will slow down traffic. And it does work for that. And so at least 2 of the 3 police officers that look after traffic throughout Ajax we have Ravencroft uniquely has its own team that goes out from the police department to man the street for speeding. And so I think that this is going to have a level of calming on that street. It's a long street, and I think that this is one of those things that I believe is the right thing to do. Thank you for your support or consideration.
Thank you, Councilor Dice.
Thank you. So I hear you where I've had it drilled into me for the past 17 years that three-way stops don't work. And for a couple of reasons, they give pedestrians a false sense of security because basically cars on the main road don't stop. And it's part of a problem that way. So I guess I want to hear from Mr. Greaves in particular. Always stops. Now, I don't believe they're a traffic calming measure. So what kind of a warrant do they have to go through to qualify?
Mr. Grieve?
Yeah, so through the chair to Regional Councillor Dyes, you are correct. The town in our traffic calming warrant notes that stop signs are not traffic calming measures. For the town, we have an always stop warrant that we use when considering both three-way and four-way always stops.
So what is the process for that warrant? And has it been done on these two streets, Radford and Brennan?
So through the chair to Regional Councillor Dyes, the process is a data collection process, and then we run a warrant. These two intersections have not been evaluated. Ravenscroft Road and Brennan Road was evaluated in it looks like 2006 from my records, and at that time did not meet the warrant. But since then, neither intersection has been evaluated.
So is there a benefit to having those looked at and going through that process prior to making a decision?
Through the chair to Regional Councillor Dyes, it would simply be the evaluation process. It would provide further information, but as put forward by Councillor Tyler Moore and Regional Councillor Crawford, the motion is simply looking to direct staff to install.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions? Councillor Tyler Moore, you have questions on your own motion?
I do not, sir, but I did forget one
Go ahead.
point. Okay, thank you for letting me back in just for 1 second. So there was something else I wanted to share with my council colleagues. So if you take Ravenscroft from Delaney all the way down to Westney, that's about 1.6 kilometers. And currently, there's only one stop sign in that 1.6 kilometers. So with the addition of these, it would effectively quarter that 1.6 kilometers, which mathematically, I'm not a traffic engineer, but that was one of the things I discussed with Mr. Grieve in traffic. It was to give you a better visual and why we wanted to go with this. And it's an all-year solution. Thank you for letting me back in, sir, Mr. Mayor.
Anything further? I have a couple of questions to Mr. Grieve, through me to Mr. Grieve. When we recently installed traffic calming measures, being bollards and others, so an analysis was done to these road sections. So I'm pretty sure you have fairly recent traffic counts, don't you, as part of the traffic calming?
To answer your question, we have what are called mid-block counts. So our traffic calming analysis does a mid-block collection, whereas an always stop warrant does an intersection count.
Okay, so given those numbers that you have from the mid-block, are they close? Do they meet the warrants for stop signs?
They are different sets of data. An always stop, you need obviously all legs of the intersection. So in this case, we don't have the volumes coming from Radford or coming from Brennan, and those are a vital component, especially in a three-way always stop consideration. It's that minor street that is typically the trigger as to whether an always stop is warranted or not.
Okay, I'm just going to speak to it quickly. I am going to support this. I really struggled with this. because I really have a problem with deviating from our policies and procedures. We went through, and Councillor Dyes will probably back me up on this, in the early 2000s, we had a whole rash of politically driven stop signs put in. And that's why the warrant system was developed, because nobody on this council is an engineer, certainly not a traffic engineer, nobody is a planner. So we have to rely on the expertise of our staff. And why go through the process of developing a warrant system and then sending staff out to do the counts and then have, you know, the professionals tell us whether or not what should be used if we're just going to make the decisions ourselves. So we did get away from that past councils, and I really am concerned that we don't go down that route again. I am supporting this time because this area, like Councillor Tyler Moran said, as the Ward 1 councillor and then the regional councillor is now as mayor, I've been dealing with this for so long. And the traffic calming that has been put in is seasonal. It gets taken out for snow removal. And I know stop signs aren't traffic calming, but I do believe them to have some effect. So I will sort of keep my mouth shut. Well, no, I won't. I'm going to talk about it, but I will support it. But I just want to caution council. I don't want this to be something where, you know, everybody comes back with their pet projects, especially if the investigation has not been done. In this case, this area in this section of road has been investigated extensively over 3+ terms of council and has met the traffic calming guidelines. And just bringing things forward in the future without following that process is going to be a problem and going to put us in a bad situation, because if we don't follow the professionals' advice, that puts us as councillors in a liability position, I believe. Because if we ask for advice and we don't follow it, we're on the hook. So saying that, I will support it, but I just want to admit that caution to council. We need to follow the rules. They're there for a reason, and they're there to make sure that every traffic issue that we have is looked at fairly and through the same lens, so everybody is treated the same. And I'll leave it at that. Anybody else wish to speak on this before we call the vote? Councillor Bauer?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for what you just said. I'm having a hard time with this motion, to be quite honest, because we are deviating from a process that does work. I drove Ravenscroft on the weekend because I had never really driven there very often at all. And I do agree with Councillor Tyler Moran that I was surprised that there are no stop signs. I counted 2 on the side that I drove, but yeah, the process does work. I mean, for example, in Ward 3, we just had a data review for an intersection that residents really were passionate about. And Mr. Grieve put it through the process, and it was warranted for a no U-turn sign. So, you know, I'm just an example of something that it does work. We do have to rely on our experts, most definitely. But having said that, if this is 3 terms of council now, that the same road, the same issues, the same concerns are coming up time and time and time again, and we've come up with a seasonal solution that I believe from the data there, it was working. It's just too bad it couldn't be a permanent solution. So I feel that this road does need something. So I will support it. But I do believe that the mayor's right. We should not be bringing all of our stop signs and speed bumps and crosswalks, etc., as motions to council going forward. Thank you.
I didn't see any other hands. Oh, Councillor Dyes.
Yeah, and I just, again, want to repeat, actually, I've had the same misgivings as a few of you have mentioned about going this route. And I get it, I've driven down there too. It's a very long street and nothing seems to be working. So just a word of caution. I mean, we can give this a try. There's no going back though, because you don't take stop signs away. And there will be a demand, if it doesn't work, that you have it policed, because that's exactly what has happened here on Rands Road. And it does slow them down to a certain extent. The problem is, like I say, it just doesn't stop it. So thank you.
Anything further? Seeing none. Those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That is unanimous. Moving on to the next, exploring Town of Ajax Rodent Control Rebate Program. Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Chair. I never would have guessed that I'd be here talking about rats at a council meeting. You know what? Thank you. I first want to say thank you to Regional Councillor Marilyn Crawford. She really worked with me on this motion and is seconding it. And, it took some time with staff. So I want to say thank you to the members of staff that met with us more than once, more than twice, to talk about this. So one of the first things that came forward at this term of council, and for me as a local councillor, was the open house and CAP meeting for the new development at Finley and Burden. And specifically, the residents' concerns about the increased sightings of rats and rodents in the neighborhood, which appeared to be connected to the development, the demolition of the plaza and the development there. And so the initial response to these concerns was education, which I think, of course, is extremely important. And we supplied residents with information sheets created by the region and the town about how to handle rodent issues and, install preventative measures for the homeowners, which is useful, but it just never felt like it was enough, in my opinion, for the number of calls and complaints and messages that I received. And the other response really was, we don't really have proof of where the rats came from, and if it was because of the construction. So I don't believe that that construction in a new development and the destruction that it causes, the disruption, I just don't believe that that and the increased sightings and nuisance of rodents and rats in the surrounding neighborhoods, I don't believe that's just a coincidence. I think it's totally related. So I was really glad to hear that other municipalities had either implemented or were planning to implement a rebate program for their residents. And I think it's a good idea. And I think we can come up with something here too. And I certainly think the timing is right as we continue to grow. Our town is growing. We were just in the paper earlier this month, the article outlining our top 5 developments in 2021, the Amazon, the LTC, the next phase of Pat Bailey, Salvation Army, and some warehousing. So there's lots going on, and I think there is need for a type of rebate program. I envision paid primarily by the developer to help our residents, and I think it's reasonable to ask that staff look into this, and I'm sure that they will come up with some smart options for us. So I hope that you will support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions on the motion? Councillor Crawford?
Not a question, but a comment, if that's okay.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, this was, I wish we could take credit for this whole thing, but it really came out of a Peel motion that I was snooping on their website for, and their motion was huge. It was
I know.
25 pages. And so, like Lisa said, with many discussions that we had with staff, we've sort of whittled down to more of hopefully an Ajax solution. to be investigated to see if this is something that we can do.
Okay. Anything further on this? Councillor Tyler Moore.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to say to Councillor Bauer and Regional Councillor Crawford, thanks for bringing this forth. This is a challenge. And oftentimes, I know I felt, and I'm sure we've all felt, sort of have our hands tied. There's not a lot we can do. I've had some rodents in my house. This is something. It's something. It's more than a pamphlet. It's more than a brochure. So thanks for bringing this forth.
Anything further from members of council? I'm interested to see the report. Because anyway, I'm interested to see the report. I'll save my questions for then. Those in favor of the staff report? Any opposed? None opposed. That's carried.
Thank you.
Next one is next two. I will relinquish the chair to Regional Councillor Dyes while I introduce these motions. First one, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Khan, who's the budget chair for this year, is that we therefore be resolved that staff be directed to investigate investment strategy options, including one investment and other opportunities, identify areas for improvement, and report back on the benefits and risks of multiple options to the May 2021 GGC committee meeting. I'm bringing this forward, just so I'll speak to it quickly, because we are facing some really strong budget pressures from every direction this year. And we are also in a time where we're experiencing enormous growth in markets. And our reserve funds that are in a lot of cases for long-term growth, if we don't get them invested and working for us, we're actually losing money every year. If inflation is 2%, and our money's sitting in the bank at 0 or quarter or 0.5%, we're losing that 1.5+% per year and that spending power. So when we do need those funds to, for instance, replace a roof in 10 years, that $1 million may really only have buying power of $800,000 at that time. And that means we have to go back to the residents to top up those reserves. And I think it's, in my opinion, negligent if we're not at least investigating this and finding out what other options there are out there. I'm not talking about, high risk type investments, but there are some very conservative, but investments out there that are not very, will protect your principal, that can give a much better rate of return than a bank account. So I think we have to at least look at that. And this is just asking for that, a report to come back and give us that information. So I'll leave it there, and I would appreciate your support. Thank you.
Are there any questions on the motion? Any comments? Councillor Lee?
Thank you, Chair. Wholeheartedly support this. This is something that I brought up separately of the mayor at various times of just, I'm no expert of investing, but I just feel like we could be making more than we're making now. For example, if we invested in GameStop, we'd be up 78% right now, but that's another story for later. But anyways, I just think we, as council progresses, as all councils progress, we have to stop looking at solutions that were created in the 60s, 70s, and 80s and start looking at modern day solutions. And to the mayor's point, this isn't a high risk, highly volatile portfolio we're looking at, but just a way to maximize the savings we do have to perhaps, create growth, alternative streams of growth within the municipality. So wholeheartedly support it, and hopefully we can get a very positive report from staff back. Thank you, Chair.
Are there any other comments or questions on the motion? Because I can't see Councillor Khan. You okay?
He's shaking his head.
I'm okay.
Okay, thank you. I'll call the vote then. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Back to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, colleagues. The next one is the endorsement of joint project ICIP, moved by myself and second by Councillor Lee. We have a number of ICIP projects coming forward, and this is just a technicality. I didn't realize that we needed to have a council resolution for this grant that we've applied for in this project going forward. So this is basically just a compliance exercise that council authorized staff to engage in negotiations and agreement development process with the region of Durham, the Provincial Ministry of Infrastructure and Infrastructure Canada to comply with any terms for joint projects set forth in the final contribution agreement pending successful applications. And that's a long way for just saying that we support any grant applications that are made on our behalf.
Are there any questions? Okay. So it's your motion, Sean, I take it, right?
Myself and Councillor Lee, this is something that's
Okay,
the region as well. So since this is through the region and it's in Ward 2, it just fell to me and then Councillor Lee for Ward 2.
okay. So we'll call the vote on that then. All in favor? Any opposed? It's carried. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, and I will regain the chair. And the next motion introduced through the waiving of the rules is the funding sick leave moved by Councillor Lee and Councillor Crawford. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair. I'll read the whole thing as it wasn't in the council packet. And I apologize, council. Thank you for letting me walk this on. There is a bit of urgency to this in terms of, we're seeing skyrocketing numbers across this entire month and last month. And realistically, it's something, let me read the motion first, excuse me. So moved by myself, seconded by Regional Councillor Crawford. Whereas COVID-19 infections continue to climb and it remains critical that all levels of government identify and fill gaps in containment measures in order to curb the spread. And whereas while lockdown measures have been successful in helping to reduce the number of infections across the province, but many in essential workplaces are still unable to choose not to go to work when sick, a known barrier to COVID-19 reduction. And whereas the federal government's Canada Recovery Sickness Benefit provides after-tax support of $450 a week for those who are sick or need to self-isolate due to COVID-19, but the fund takes time to access and doesn't cover many workers' full wages. And whereas the provincial government has extended the infectious disease emergency leave for the first half of 2021, which makes it easier for employees to take the necessary time off, but does not assist with compensation. And whereas a primary or sole income earner in a household may not enjoy the privilege of being able to reduce their salary and or wait for support, and whereas the Ontario Big Cities mayors have requested the governments of Canada, Ontario to move swiftly to provide longer, better funded sick leave to help address the ongoing spread of COVID-19, now therefore be resolved that 1, Ajax Council requests the Government of Canada and Ontario work collaboratively to increase current support programs to provide longer and funded sick leave for those who do not already have access through their employer. And 2, this motion be distributed to Honourable Mark Holland, MP, Rod Phillips, MPP, the Region of Durham, Durham Region Municipalities, Ontario's Big City Mayors, and the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. And I'd like to speak on it, Chair, if that's okay.
Please go ahead.
I mean, the numbers speak for themselves. Right now, 70% of low-wage workers across the country do not have access to paid sick leaves. And that's creating a public health hazard. In the United States, cities that have implemented paid sick leave saw a 40% reduction in influenza rates during flu outbreaks. So it's proven that this is actually not just benefiting the workers, but benefiting the overall cities themselves. Most importantly, though, our frontline workers, our low-income support workers, they've been supporting us from day one of COVID. Whereas a lot of us have had to sit back and just do essential shopping, they've had to put themselves at risk time and time again. And early on, we all supported them. We painted rocks, we drove in caravans, and we said it was fantastic. But now it just seems we have lost sight of the fact that this paid sick leave specifically helps women, minorities, migrant workers, people who are most vulnerable, need the most help. It's not a big ask. And as a result, I'll just say it one more time. They've been there for us since day one. I think it's our turn to have their backs. So I'd love council support on this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions or speakers on the motion? I'll just quickly, we did discuss this at the Big City Mayors 2 Fridays ago. Glad to support it there. We also endorsed it today in item 17 of correspondence, the Peels motion on the same thing. We've got, I believe the NDP and the Liberal parties provincially have brought out endorsement for this for paid sick leave. So I believe this is getting some momentum and probably will happen and is much needed. So glad to see it brought forward. Anything further from any members of council? Being none, those in favor? I see all hands, that's carried. That completes our motions. Moving on to bylaws, we have moved by Councillor Bauer, second by Councillor Crawford, the bylaw numbers 02-2021 and 08-2021 be read a first, second, third time and passed. Any questions on the bylaws? Just want to point out that on there, one of the ones is the sign bylaws, which basically just, we brought up at regional council, it didn't make sense to have 8 municipal sign bylaws for local roads and then a different set of bylaws for regional roads. So what this does is just brings the enforcement. So if the regional road is in Ajax, the rules follow the Ajax rules, which is good. Councillor Crawford.
Thank you. I don't think in my entire history here have I ever questioned this in this section, but under the tree, boulevard tree bylaw, I seem to remember, was this not part of the parking bylaw, the tree rings and all that stuff? Wasn't it part of that parking bylaw that we deferred to June?
I think these are just bringing these 3 bylaws into conformity with the regional one, but I'll ask the clerk, Ms. Cooper, to speak to this. I don't think Mr. Hannon is on this call.
He is not. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. So what these 2 bylaws are, the Boulevard Tree Bylaw and the Road Occupancy Bylaw, these are actually arising from Cassandra Cruciano's report in November, which brought about the Boulevard Encroachment Policy, if you recall. So these are just administrative updates that are giving effect to what council approved as part of Cassandra's report in November.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Anything further? Hearing and seeing none, those in favor of the bylaws, I see all hands, that's carried. Do we have any notice of motion? Councillor Crawford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a notice of motion brought forward in February to have the government of Ontario phase out provincial gas-fired power plants by 2030. And that is seconded by Regional Councillor Sterling Lee.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other notice of motion? Hearing, seeing none. New business and announcements. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to give a shout out to Inspector Mitch Martin and DRPS West Division. It's been I've been very critical of the diversity in our police force, and just I want to make sure that its quality and inclusion is a high priority. But at the end of the day, we, Councillor Khan and I had in one street 2 shootings and an act of arson that happened within a 7-day period. And without a doubt, we got tons of calls from concerned residents, completely justified concerned residents. And so what Inspector Martin did was he had a notification of community crime in the area, which just means that I think it was about 10 officers, including himself, set up at the mobile station at a local school, and they were just canvassing for information and just letting residents know what happened, who to contact if it happens again, setting up security precautions. They went out of their above and beyond to ensure residents felt safe in a time where they felt vulnerable. I said it before and I'll say it again, and I'm sure Councillor Khan agrees, there's no safer place to live than in Ward 2. We truly believe that, and this is obviously the act of some rogue individuals and shouldn't be reflective of the safe community as a whole. And as a whole, the community hadn't had an incident in over 10 plus years. So again, I just wanted to give a shout out to Inspector Mitch Martin and West Division for just assisting us and being in contact throughout. And then one more, just more of a work thing. We've had 2 very productive and well-attended open houses for the medallion development on Rosslyn and Audley. The last open house is going to be scheduled for Thursday. If you want to register, please go to imo.ajax.ca because we'd love to hear as much feedback as possible. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Any other announcements? Councillor Crawford?
I think that this comes up before our next council meeting. We do have a community meeting coming up on February the 16th. I know that seems like a long ways away, but it is before our next council meeting. So I just wanted to let everybody in Ward 1 know that our next community meeting is on the 16th, and hope we'll see you there.
Thank you. Councillor Dice?
Thank you. I just wanted to remind residents that the Carruthers Creek Watershed Plan has been completed, and because of COVID, We held off having a public open house because we were hoping we could do that in person where you could have a presentation. But it doesn't look like that's going to happen soon. So we have put it on Zoom for it's scheduled with Toronto Region Conservation Authority for February the 4th at 7 p.m. And I encourage you to go online and watch the presentation on the health of the Carruthers Creek watershed. And also it's open for comments to the report that they've done that you can comment on with the ministry for anything. So it's a good starting point for everybody to be there and attend that meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Isn't there a second one on the February the 1st as well, Councillor Dice? Oh, you're muted.
I can't answer that. I thought there were two, but I only saw the February 4th was being posted.
Okay, I believe there are two, and I think the information is on our town website.
It is. It's right on the web page on the first one.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Khan.
Thank you, Your Worship. Coming to a close, this is just an opportunity to remind our Ajax residents to, we have an obligation to protect our community and protect our neighbors, and most of all, protect our vulnerable population. And the best way for doing this is to stay home. And you should know that your Ajax representatives, your councillors, are trying to lead by example, and we are trying to fulfill all these requirements. And we really implore you, our residents, to abide with this. And it's the only way and the fastest way we can get out of this situation we're in. So please, residents, stay home. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. And I know for an absolute fact that everybody is home.
Yeah.
I have confirmed that. Councillor Crawford.
Thank you for letting me back in. I did want to let everybody know too that our driveway zoning bylaw amendment open houses are coming up on February the 9th. There are some really significant changes that will really benefit the residents if you are looking to actually widen your driveways in any way, shape, or form. So it will be good information to attend to, both from 2 to 4 and from 7 to 9 on the 9th of February.
Thank you. Anything further? I just have one, and I do apologize. I neglected to give some sad news at the beginning of the meeting. And so I will do it now. Unfortunately, Mayor Bath Haddon, Mayor of Brock Township, passed away yesterday after a long battle with cancer. I just want, on behalf of myself, and I'm sure all of council, send my deepest sympathies to the family, friends, and colleagues of Brock Township on behalf, or in the tragic news of Mayor Bath Haddon's death. She was a very strong, positive force. I had the good fortune to serve her there for many years on regional council. She took a leave of absence last year, and she will be really missed. So I did forget to mention that at the beginning, but our condolences. And I did have the flags in the town of Ajax lowered to half mast in recognition. Moving along to confirming bylaw, we have moved by Councillor Tyler Moore and second by Councillor Khan. The bylaw number 09-2021 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Ajax at its regular meeting held on January 25th, 2021, be read a first, second, third time and passed. Those in favor? None opposed, carried. And finally, everybody's favorites, moved by Councillor Khan, second by Councillor Dies, that the January 25th, 2021 meeting of the Council of the Town of Ajax be adjourned. Those in favor? That is carried.